Welcome back to the We Thrive 2025 Summit. I'm here with none other than Melanie McGehee. Hey, Melanie, I'm going to read your brilliant bio. By the way, I joke with Melanie about this. She has an MFA in
Mhm.
creative nonfiction, right? Creative nonfiction? Did I say it right?
Yes.
Writing.
Well, I have a master's in creative nonfiction, MFA in creative writing.
And she writes the shortest bios of anyone I've
Yeah.
ever worked with. So this is what she gave me. Melanie McGehee finds comfort, confidence, and courage in her writing practice. She mostly shares those in a fall workshop that she called The Powerful Essay and is planning more community writing events this upcoming year. She has an MFA in creative writing. She would love for you to follow her on her Substack, which we will drop a link in a little bit later, but she's also really easy to find. Melanie McGehee from us at We Thrive 2025. Welcome and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Shannon. Shannon was a big part of me finding myself and my dream. We're going to talk not about writing. We're going to talk about reading. And I did a Canva. I did a Canva because I learned how to do Canva a tiny bit when I had to do my presentation at school. So I'm going to see if I can share my screen.
Okay. It's showing up and it's
Yeah,
about to
yeah,
be,
yeah.
well, we're looking at Zoom.
Uh,
You just tab over one. There you go.
do you see it now?
Perfect.
This is the book, y'all. I am launching, I'm going to call it today, I am soft launching a book club that came to mind last summer when I was in a publishing class. And I was realizing that publishing is a lot of things. You know, publishing basically is helping someone else maybe to get their story or their words out there. And you may not be interested in joining my book club, and that is fine. You may want to start your own, but I think if you go with me on this little journey in the next half hour or so, where we unpack mine, I think that you may have some ideas for your own if you choose to go that way. Shannon and I kind of touted it as a book club for allies, for advocates, for activists. And I did not want to scare the ordinary people away, if you know what I mean. Um, because I'm trying to change some minds out there, not just read and discuss to the choir. So decided I'm going to call it a club for good citizens. I mean, don't we all want to be a good citizen? Um, so in the next little while, we're going to talk about what is a book club? Why do people join book clubs? My little story of how I fell into this dream of this particular book club. Then I want to think about who really does change the world. Some books we might want to read together that we believe will change the world and some questions to ask. So, I don't know, Shannon, if I can work the share and also see the chat.
I'm
Um,
happy to be your buddy in that.
so I would love it. If you could maybe add in the chat your first name, which I know your first name's already on there, but humor me, I guess. Your first name and the city that you're zooming from. And I'll see. Evidently, I can't see the chat.
I'll read it to you.
Oh,
Tish,
wait, here it is.
you can see it. Okay, good. You can read it. You want
Yes.
to read it out loud?
Oh, my word. There is a Tish from Atlanta, which means that my cousin may be on here. That is so exciting. All right, Alyssa's zooming from Columbia. Alyssa was here yesterday, and I didn't say it, but Shannon, Alyssa is like a published poet,
I know.
songwriter, so I felt quite
I was there when she
honored.
won an award that had money, the check, and I've seen
Yeah.
it. I witnessed.
You and I were there when she got the fall lines money. So I love it. I would ask for one of you. We have just a little bit of time for this sharing, but one of you has to come off mute and tell me a good book club experience that you have had in your lifetime? And after that, I want to hear a bad one because I feel like we've all had a bad one. So, Kara is in a book club. I know Charlie loves books. So, anyone, Shannon, look like they're coming off mute to share a good book club experience?
I'm looking. Well, I can tell you that I did one with none other than Taylor Simon. I have never had a book club like that before. I've never been in one like that. It was an amazing. We did oh, and I just gave that book away to another client because it's so good. Taylor, if you're not taking a rest, we did Rachel E. Cargill's A Renaissance of Our Own. And it is a beautiful book about, oh, so many things. But
What
yes,
what made it good for you? It sounds like one of the things was Taylor had the expertise in choosing a book that meant something to you.
yes. And the group of people we were ready to think it through. I like that it was like Rachel E. Cargill is a Black woman. She calls herself a public academician. Anyway, she's like a public knowledge person. She just like has changed the way I think about doing good work in the world. I learned public academic. There it is. Yeah. Also, it was well paced. I'm a slow reader.
Okay. All right, somebody give me a bad book club experience. Am I the only one that's had one?
No,
Alyssa,
you're not. Um,
I'm not glad for you, but I'm
I
glad
still
you're going to
read the
share,
book.
Alyssa.
Um, so I was seeing this farmer, and he really wanted us to read The Unsettling of America. Um, and so he gave me his book, and then he moved to New York. So we didn't even read the book together. I read it on my own. I marked up the copy of the book that he gave me, and now it is my copy. So thanks to Farmer Boy, I recommend that book all the time. So we turned it around.
Love it. That kind of sounds like a combo dating book club experience. It's funny, one of my friends is doing online dating, and she asked if she's going to go on a date. They have to choose a book, and their first date is meeting and talking about the book. So it's really cool. Um, Anyone else want to jump in?
we've got Susan in the chat.
Okay, Susan. Susan, you're from San Diego, is that right? Did I see that? We hope you're safe and that there's not lots of
Smoke.
smoke and the air quality is okay. Silent Book Club San Diego, we share books we're reading and then read to ourselves. They're about an hour and a half. Oh, good. I'm glad for the air quality. Yeah, I love book clubs where you meet and spend your time reading. Um, I think the best thing about book clubs that are successful is that they're very well defined. So, I have been reading a book, or mostly actually looking at her website, Priya Parker, and she talks about the art of gathering and how we can set up good, successful meetings. The biggest thing that she says is for us to ask ourselves why, why, and you go through multiple layers. At this time in my life, I am unlike a lot of my friends who choose to be in a book club because they are wanting to read books that are very entertaining, a light read. Actually, what they are wanting to do is get together once a month and drink wine, which is totally fine. There are lots of people out there that use a book club basically like a supper club, as a social thing. That's not where I am. I'm the age where I like to sit at home on my couch after dinner, but I do love to read books. And I had this tremendous experience during grad school. When you are learning the craft of writing, hopefully refining ways to write better, the biggest thing you can do is not go to school and get an MFA. The biggest thing you can do is read lots and lots of books. And so I'm coming out of my MFA program with two very strong beliefs. One, that the practice of writing can be very powerful for each person, whether they publish or share their writing with anyone. And two, that good stories told well can change the world. I believe that in part because I took a semester reading medical memoirs because I got very intrigued by this idea of narrative medicine. Narrative medicine promotes that doctors and nurses, medical professionals, can do a better job for their patients if they have narrative competence, which basically means they know how to understand a story. And some of the books that I read when I was reading medical memoirs, I had this experience where I thought, if everyone I knew read this book, the world would be a better place. Now, who doesn't want to make the world a better place? And yet sometimes, especially on a day like today, when we think about people who've made a tremendous difference in world history, I'm talking about MLK Jr., we feel very small. Because the fact is that when we want to change the world, I think a lot of times we think about institutional change. That certainly needs to be made in our cities, our states, and our nation. So I started thinking about these institutions that ought to be changed. I thought about it after I read Audre Lorde's medical memoir that came out in 1980. I thought about it when I read the poet and essayist Anne Boyer's memoir that came out 40 years later in 2020 and won the Pulitzer for nonfiction. And I thought, they want to change the family unit in some ways. I thought another institution that I know and am a pretty big part of locally is the church. Another institution in society, you can see it there: school, education, medical health, economic, job markets, government, the judicial system. There are lots of systems out there that I feel a very tiny part of, but I actually know people who are working in those institutional systems in West Columbia and Columbia, South Carolina. I know my priest and I love him, and I actually know pastors in other faith traditions that are here locally. I know a lot of teachers. I know some of my school board members because I have been going to meetings for a year or more to advocate against book banning. I have a doctor. I know a few nurses. I know the mayor of West Columbia. Maybe you see sort of where I'm going. And I started thinking, if I could get one or two people from each of those, what seems like institutions that I cannot touch myself, to read some of these books that made an impact on me, I think I might have a chance at changing my little part of the world. And I think that a lot of us are clinging to hope today. So I am going to slip back over here into the chat, and I'd love to ask you, if you could make the world a better place, is there a book that you could think of that you would have people read? Total Garbage: How We Can Fix Our Waste and Heal Our World. I catched, I think it was Susan in the hour before talk about advocating for good use of the land. And I think that's something we can do a lot of good towards and change people's minds about. We'll see.
Bell
Totally.
hooks. Bell hooks
Books,
all day. Bell hooks all day, every day.
bell hooks all day, every day.
No, that's not the name of her book. All about love. I mean, there's so many books. Bell hooks is, I would have people read all about love.
All right. My cousin Tish is on there, and I put this question out on social media because I truly was interested. I feel like the books that I'm gonna propose are like a very little narrow segment of what's out there. A lot of people suggested fiction to me, certain novels that they believed. I guess the themes of them would help change the world. I don't have so much faith in my readers. I think they need to be a little more direct and interface. So my list is going to be creative nonfiction type books. Emergent strategy was on the list. Someone else said it, but my cousin Tish, I think, has a friend who published a book very recently about 13 people who changed the course of American history.
Yeah, it's called The Small and the Mighty. It's my book club leader, Sharon McMahon. And it's about 13 people that you haven't heard of, but who did small things that led to mighty changes. A lot of them, especially in the like segregation and a lot of women movement stuff. So it was really cool because especially right now during this time, you're kind of like, oh, I can't do anything to change the world. But you can. There's a lot of things. As you said, we need to focus on our community and our church and those people around us that we can reach.
I love it. I mean, I had to give her a plug and that book, and I would love it if you had a link for that, if you could put it in the chat.
Okay.
Be a Revolution. Y'all, I love it. I'm going to take us in a kind of a different direction. Um, for for this is the book. I am for the first several books going to use some of these medical memoirs, and I want to show you one. I'm going to use a book called Tessa Miller's What Doesn't Kill You: A Life with Chronic Illness, Lessons from a Body in Revolt. I read this book because it was assigned to me. I would never have come upon it on my own. And the reason I liked it, her chronic illness was Tessa has Crohn's disease. And I know two people, actually one of them is no longer living, but I've known two people with Crohn's, and I had no idea what they actually experienced. Tessa told me that in a way that the people who have it probably were not willing to be vulnerable enough about. And that's okay. Everyone can choose which and how much of parts of themselves that they can share. But she told it in a story. And then she gave resources. So, What Doesn't Kill You is actually, I think, a powerhouse of a memoir because to me, it became a handbook if you had a chronic illness that I could give to someone else. And within it, she tells them how to live within the current systems that they find themselves in. So, what's the big deal? When I was reading this book, I was actually tasked with choosing someone at church to do a Sunday job. And the person that my priest put forward for me to chat with um, told me that she had a chronic condition. And I knew that condition was probably going to keep her away from working with me on Sundays, probably once every 4 or 5 weeks. And the Melanie before I read Tessa's book would have crossed her off the list. The Melanie that had just read Tessa Miller's book about those with chronic illness decided this is the person I want to agree to work with and for as she goes through that. That's the kind of books that I want to look at. And I want to ask people those kind of questions after they read the book. I want to ask them, what surprised you when you read this book? And will you change your way of thinking about something? Because I think that the first way that we really enact change is to change thoughts that people have. You have to change their thoughts before you can make them really take any sort of action at all. But then, is there an action that you want to take? So, I have committed to myself that I'm going to think about 2 or 3 people in those institutions that I know, and I'm going to ask them, will you read with me this book called What Doesn't Kill You? I'm going to give them 6 weeks to read the book because I think that people need lots of time. I also am hoping that once they get the book to read it, that they will fall in love and share their copy with someone else before the 6 weeks is up. And then at the gathering that I want to hold on Facebook Live or on Zoom, I want to gather people together and I want to have a panel. And I want my panel to, first of all, be those community leaders. And I want to ask them, what surprised you when you read this book? Will you change your way of thinking about something? And is there an action that you want to take now? I'm going to have to be brave enough to actually do the ask. And I'm going to ask them if they'll join me just for 2 books. Because I know busy people are commitment phobic. Is that sort of word? So I planned for this little presentation to be fairly short because I'd love to hear about your ideas. We need to figure out the logistics if we're going to have a successful book club. We need to figure out where we're going to have it, if we're going to do it online or in person, how often we're going to meet. There's that sweet spot between giving people enough time and giving them so much time that they procrastinate and never do it. You're going to have to decide who's going to do the choosing for the books. And for me, because I have a specific goal in mind, I'm going to be selfish for the first several times that we choose a book. I'm going to choose the book before I let it go up for grabs to a vote. I think that you also could think about, are you going to provide the books for some people? So that requires a little bit of money. But there's several ways that you could go about doing that. And I'm going to ask that anyone who joins my This Is the Book Club for Good Citizens purchase their books from Liberation is Lit, a little bookshop link to support Taylor. I'm going to ask that those who can offer to buy an extra book. Some people are far enough along in organizing a book club that I think that they might go out there and look for grants that they could find to purchase a group of books for them. And I would love it if one day I could go in to a partner organization and say, how many of your employees would you have read this book that might change things? So for me, I'm going to remember my goal. in my book club. It's not going to be for meeting together and drinking wine, even though I think that we're going to have lots of fun. But it's going to be to promote the reading and then the discussion, because these things require a lot of talking about, of books that help us understand the experience of others. And the purpose is going to be to better the community that we're in and the systems that we live in. So I'm going to unshare. I think stop share. I love it, Susan. I'm so glad that you found Tessa Miller's book at your library, because this was not in our library now. And I think that that is another thing that we can do to promote books that we read, that we really believe in. Make sure that your libraries have that book. Most of our libraries, if we go in and we use them regularly, they're going to take our request and advice to buy some. So, my first question I would love to maybe think about in the chat is, what is an institution that you would love to see changed?
You know, my first thought, Melanie, was like, who, like, you can't make somebody read. You can't make somebody care. But I don't know. I kind of think that the mayor of the town I live in, I would really like to see city planner, city leader. I just would like to see people making local decisions about groups of people they don't know. Read anything, something, read something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just
I would say
promoting
city
reading.
government.
Yeah, and I mean, here we are. You're in Columbia, I'm in West Columbia. I also know the mayor of Casey, and we're right here at the State House. Um, I I want to be a voice for not banning books. But one thing that I'm going to choose to do, because I want to be reaching across the aisle, so to speak, is I'm not necessarily going to choose books that are in the book banning category right now for this. Because that's another little aisle, of advocacy. There are a lot of books out there that are not even getting noticed at all, and they're primarily for adults. Yeah, if the state school board would just read the whole entire books that they're banning. Susan shared about healthcare, and that's what brought me to reading these types of books. And so I'd love to share with you a couple other books that I read that I feel like intersect with healthcare, but also are broader. Some of y'all know, and you heard about it if you were with us yesterday, but Hunger by Roxane Gay is a book that starts with a scene in a healthcare setting. Roxane is going in to decide if she's going to have what I think was gastric bypass surgery. And there are certainly things about the healthcare system there. But a book like Hunger by Roxane Gay has so many multiple avenues that it can make you think about. One, it made me a kinder person when I get on airplanes. And I know that sounds very, very simple, but Roxane Gay is a very, very tall person, and she's obese. And I do not use that term derisively. I don't know what that word is, because Roxane uses the word obese describing herself. And in some later chapters, she talks about what life is like to be a bigger person. And I honestly feel like that it made me kinder. And so that was important. Roxane talks about being the survivor of sexual trauma at a young age. And so this book would be a book I feel like community leaders could also read and think about what it means to be a survivor of trauma. Um, it's like I'm so used to talking to children and to being in person, and so like I'm looking at the blank screens, and I would be on a blank screen if I was zooming today too. So I don't even know how many people are here still here with me, but Alyssa said housing and zoning. Maybe I'd have the landlord. That's close, isn't it? I'm renting from Current Civic Engineers and a few others. Read something by, and I will not pronounce the name correctly, but it is a person who has been unhoused and is a celebrated writer. Yes, yes. Homeless. A homeless story is actually, Alyssa, one that I had in my mind that I did not have a book for that particular thing.
I didn't know that he had lived on the streets of Chicago until I heard an interview on NPR. So just me finding something from him that maybe talks into that experience or anything, but just reading his essays and his prose, his poetry is all really wonderful and really, really human.
In my previous life, which I would say is before I got married, I worked for a home builder, and I actually had a real estate license and the whole realtor thing and everything. What would it be like if every home builder and every real estate agent in America read a book by an unhoused person? And maybe they have. I mean, I'm not putting all these people in a category to say that they're not. But it's just eye-opening, you know? Um, Susan says more government emphasis on electrifying. Induction is safer and faster than gas or standard electric. So Susan, if I wanted to look at that subject, and this is the book, I think that maybe I might research and see if there was an engineer or chemist or a scientist who in particular had decided to go into that maybe realm of study, if that makes sense. There's certainly nonfiction books that give lots of data, facts, statistics. But when I choose my books for this book club in particular, I'm going to look for books that also have a very individual, narrative. But yeah, I'm going to throw this out for you. There's going to be a lot of people who are not going to read a book the size of Hunger or What Doesn't Kill You. Even more people who are probably not going to make it through the entire book that I probably love the most during my literary analysis semester with medical memoirs, which was called A Body Undone. Because she got a little English professory on me. Her name was Christina Crosby, and Christina Crosby became a quadriplegic at the age of 50 from a very strange bicycle accident. And Christina Crosby helped understand what it was like to be paralyzed. And I should have gotten an inkling about that because my cousin's daughter lived paralyzed with a spinal cord injury for 8 years. But it wasn't until this past year reading the story that I'll say to my cousin Tish, I sort of really, I finally had empathy for my young cousin Heather. But some people aren't going to read those too long. There's some beautiful children's books out there. absolutely beautiful children's books that I feel like could really be held up in a way that could change people and individuals and institutions. Um, I read a book in the last year called I Talk Like a River. And it was about a young boy, it's a picture book, who came to understand and accept his stuttering. So, mm, Shannon says, I watch as they ban YA books because they are geared toward a reading age and level that most Americans are.
That sounds funny, but the truth is, as like public educators, I and just like people who write things to like,
Mm.
I heard eight. It's like there's something about an eight. It's either eighth grade or 8 years old reading level. Can an 8-year-old get what you're trying to say? Not to like talk down to people, but like as we're communicating, most people in America, eighth grade, there it is, eighth grade. Yep. And when they're banning the YA books, I'm like, maybe that's where we could have gotten it. Middle YA books, middle grade.
I would love some good ideas for my young adults and my great nieces for books like that can help broaden their horizon and motivate them to change the world. First of all, I'm gonna read that your friend's book, but I know how to find you, so I'm gonna think of some books like that. Graphic novels. It's very funny because I started my semester with narrative medicine reading with my mentor, and his first book list for me were graphic novels. The first 3 books I read were about breast cancer, and they were all call them cartoon books, y'all. I do, and I don't, but yeah, graphic novels. Um, and that, I feel like that is when we really are looking at our audience and we're trying to decide what is it? What is my goal for these books that I'm choosing? And the first thing is, are the people going to read them? And I think a good mix with adult books, middle grade books, graphic novels. I read a book, El Defo is a middle grade graphic novel about a girl who is deaf and leans into that as she changes schools and has to make new friends. Oh my gosh, Taylor says I always pick books with the audiobook version. Yes, El Defo, Tish, you need to, um I rarely listen to audiobooks, and it's something that I need to maybe start doing. I don't know, but I definitely, as a champion for literacy and for reading, need to take that approach, Taylor, that a lot of people are going to listen to the book, especially some of these really busy people in life that I'm trying to grab their attention. Is it Janita? Is that how I pronounce your name? You came off and on screen, so I just wondered if there was something you wanted to share with us, or if are you our next presenter?
I am one of the next presenters, but I will say that I love audio books.
Mm.
I didn't think I would. I recently just listened to my first fiction book via audio. I normally do like the self-help business books audio because it's easier, like when you're walking or when you're working. But I do love the audio versions. And one of my book clubs, we always make sure whatever book we choose, there's a free audio version available.
Love it.
That's all.
Other resources that I'm going to use. Most of these authors have videos online.
You too.
So, it's really fun. Sometimes I've watched some of the little videos they do, like interviews before I read their book, I admit. but yeah, even like after, is see what the author says about their own book. Um, and what did they think? How did they want to change someone's what did they want their story to do when they put it out in the world? Some of these people, I'm really hoping Tessa Miller, that I'm gonna get her to visit, at least for a few minutes when I do my 6-week wrap up and panel for What Doesn't Kill Us. Because don't we really love real author visits and her book clubs? Mhm. Spotify premium membership, YouTube, yeah. Um, I'm gonna say this as someone who hopes to have a book out there soon. I love all these things, and yet I'm gonna challenge us. If you have enough money, you know, buy a book. Yeah, I totally use Libby. Libby is the one that I use all the time. And I'm gonna confess that before I went to school for writing, that I got to the point in my life where I was rarely ever buying a book. Minimalism is a way of life. It absolutely is. So, um, I'm a 45-minute kind of girl. Shayna knows that. And so, you've got about a minute to throw out any questions or comments or suggestions or things that you want for this book club workshop that we're in. And then I'm going to be the one that promises you all that you get a bathroom break.
Hey, I
Authors
actually,
get royalties from libraries that purchase their books. They absolutely do. That's
ooh, and
why I
you
was
can
like,
request certain things too. You can request. I actually have a question.
Mhm.
Can we use our imaginations for a second?
Mm.
And in our imagination, can you walk us into you and this book club and who you're going to talk to about it? Like, well, I'm personally very curious about who you're going to invite in to read the book and imagining it going well. Can you walk us into that scenario?
Yeah. Um, so for this first one, and the book is going to be about chronic illness. And it's Tessa Miller found out when she was in her 20s. She was a Midwest Western girl who went to New York City and got a job in publishing. She started getting sick over and over and over and over and over again. Um, but it's not just adults who have chronic, illness. All ages do. So I want to also think about children that miss a lot of school or some things like that too. Um, on my list is going to be my pastor, Father Lyon. I'm going to invite the mayor of West Columbia, Tim Miles, and the mayor of Casey. Um, I'm going to invite a couple of friends who own their own companies and employ like a good group of people, a large some sort of people. And I'm going to invite the school board and a couple of teachers. Um, I'm going to invite my cardiologist and my gynecologist. And so I'm going to hopefully have them on Zoom like we are. And I'm going to say, hey, you really blessed me by agreeing to read this book. It it takes some time to do that. I just wanted to ask you, is this a book you would have ever picked up on your own to read? Are you glad you read it? What surprised you? Hey, Father Lion, when you read about her story and about her pain, did it make you understand pain in a way that will make you a better pastor when you visit parishioners who are in pain? Did it make you feel differently maybe about some people in our congregation who don't show up for mass that often? Maybe. Hey, Mr. Dennis. Um, how many people you have over there? 100 in that office building? How often does it come up that people tell you about their illnesses in a job interview? And I know that we're landing on some legal stuff here and everything, but did this book give you any kind of workarounds that you might, deal with your employees differently? Hey, Hawkins, you have any kids in your first grade class who you think moms might have a chronic illness? I mean, just never make it to a PTA meeting, never come. Did any of them come to mind? Do you feel like that you would have maybe some different ideas about dealing with parents of children in your class who have a car? I mean, is that enough, Shannon?
Amazing. I have never heard I've never heard of anyone using a book club in this way. And I feel like this first one is combating ableism. And that beyond the word disability, you're combating a really important topic and humanizing it with leaders who can make a difference one by one. So I'm very excited for one.
Thank you.
This is we can't wait to be with you as you do this. How do folks find you, connect with you, want to be a part of this? How do they connect with you after this? Because I know we're 5 minutes over.
I would love a follow on Substack, which
Mhm.
is melaniemcgehee.substack.com.
Thank you.
Or if that's not your thing, email me, melaniemcgehee@gmail.com.
One E, then two E's.
One E, then two E's. Yeah. And yeah, it's gonna take me a day or two to get back with you. I'm gonna just confess that, but I'll send you a suggested book list and I'll send you info about my actual book club. Because we've compiled some authors and book names here, but I also have my own list and I also have a list that I gathered because I'm not against fiction and novels, and I got a lot of suggestions about those when I ask on social media.
We're also excited about your book, by the way.
Thank you.
Keep us updated on the Substack, please. The
Thank you.
progress. I know big things are coming for you. Y'all, can we please give some love and support to our dear friend, reading book club buddy, Melanie McGehee. Melanie, thank you as always. Not so selfish of a plug. If you follow the @What She Said project, this is where often Melanie McGehee and myself and other friends are found, like Taylor Simon also, doing cool things like book clubs and writing cool things and having gatherings. So that's another way to find out what's going on. Maybe we'll give Melanie a day and a half to recover from this moment. We are at a time to have a little break, although you're here, Janita. We're coming back in just a second. Here, all the way from Mexico and traveling. We are so excited that you're here. Woo! This day is going to be fun, but I'm going to stop the recording. Everybody take a potty break, get your refresh your beverage, get a snack, and then we'll be back because you don't want to miss this next one. Okay, see you soon.